10 neighbors were standing outside when my daughter shut the car door in my face. "Dad, there's no room." I looked at the 3 cars packed with luggage. She smiled awkwardly. "You'll only get in the way of the trip." A few neighbors looked away. One of them suddenly became very interested in his phone. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to reconsider. I simply watched as the 3 cars rolled out of my driveway. My daughter waved once through the window. Then they disappeared around the corner. I stood there alone. My name is Walter Hayes, and I'd spent 32 years building the house they had just left from. It wasn't just a house. It was where my wife and I had raised our children. After she passed away, I kept the place exactly the same. My daughter had always called it Dad's house. Apparently, that meant something different to her now. I walked back inside. The silence felt heavier than usual. I looked at the family photographs on the wall. Then I walked into my office, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a folder. Inside was the original property deed. My name was the only name on it. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I picked up my phone. I called the real estate agency I'd used years earlier. "Hello. I'd like to list my property." The agent sounded surprised. "Are you sure, Mr. Hayes?" "Completely. How soon do you want it on the market?" I looked through the window at the empty driveway. "Today." There was a pause. "Understood." I hung up. Then I called the locksmith. "Change every exterior lock." By sunset, the house was no longer available to my daughter. But I wasn't finished because the real estate agent had already found a buyer. And when they arrived at my house the next morning, my daughter was going to learn something she never expected. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the clock. For years, that house had been my daughter's safety net. She knew she could come home whenever she wanted. She knew I would pay for repairs. She knew there was always a room waiting for her. I never complained. I thought that was what fathers did. At 9:30, the real estate agent arrived. Her name was Melissa. She walked through the house quietly, taking notes. "Mr. Hayes, this property will attract serious buyers." "Good. Are you sure you want to sell?" I looked around. "Yes." She nodded. Then she asked the question I expected. "Where will you live?" I smiled. "Somewhere smaller." She didn't push. Before leaving, she handed me a folder. "The first interested buyer wants to see it tomorrow." "Fine. He's actually nearby." "Who is he?" She smiled. "A local developer." I nodded. "Let him come." At noon, my phone started ringing. My daughter's name appeared. I let it ring. Then came a text. "Dad, we're almost there." I frowned. "Almost where?" Another message arrived. "The kids are exhausted. Can you open the gate?" I looked through the window. The driveway was empty. Then I realized what had happened. They had apparently planned to return from their trip early. They expected the house to be waiting. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, 3 cars appeared at the end of the street. My daughter got out first. She walked toward the gate, then stopped. A large "For Sale" sign stood in my front yard. Her face went completely white. "She called me," I answered. "Dad, what's that sign?" "The house is for sale." "What?" "You heard me. But where are we supposed to go?" I looked through the window. "You told me there was no room for me." She stared at the house, then whispered, "You're not seriously selling it." I looked at the clock. "Your timing is interesting." Then I heard another car approaching. The buyer had arrived, and my daughter was standing right beside the gate. The buyer stepped out of a black SUV. He was in his late 50s, wearing a gray jacket and carrying a leather folder. My daughter immediately walked toward him. "Excuse me, who are you?" He looked at her. "I'm here to see the property." She glanced at the "For Sale" sign, then back at him. "This is my father's house." He smiled politely. "Then you're Mr. Hayes' daughter?" "Yes." "Nice to meet you." She looked confused. "He's not selling this." The buyer looked at me through the window. I opened the front door. "He is." My daughter turned around. "Dad." I walked toward the gate. The 3 cars behind her were packed with luggage. Her children were still sitting inside. "You came back early because you needed the house." She nodded. Of course you did. She lowered her voice. Can we talk privately? There's nothing private about this. She looked around. The same neighbors who had watched her shut the car door on me were now watching everything. She took a breath. I was stressed. You said there wasn't room. I didn't mean it like that. You told me I'd get in the way. She looked down. I was wrong. The buyer cleared his throat. Mr. Hayes, would you like me to come back later? No. I looked at my daughter. Stay. She stared at me. Why? Because you should hear this. I turned toward the buyer. We're still proceeding. My daughter's eyes widened. Dad, you can't. I can. This is our home. I looked at her. No, it was your childhood home. There's a difference. She became angry. You would really sell the house just because I left you behind? I shook my head. No. I pointed toward the 3 cars. I'm selling it because I finally realized something. What? You don't need a father. She stared at me. You need a house. Then the buyer opened his folder. He placed an offer on the hood of his SUV. My daughter looked at the number. Her face changed because the offer was far higher than she expected, and suddenly she understood exactly what she had just thrown away. My daughter stared at the offer. That's impossible. The buyer smiled. It's based on the current market. She looked at me. You've already agreed to this. Not yet. Then don't. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because we can work something out. I almost laughed. Like what? She looked embarrassed. I'll pay rent. With what? She didn't answer. Her husband finally stepped out of the car. He'd been silent the entire time. Dad, we didn't realize you were serious. I looked at him. You knew I owned the house? Yes. And you knew I was staying here? Yes. Then, why did nobody make room for me? He looked at my daughter. She stared at the ground. The buyer quietly stepped away. My daughter moved closer. Dad, please. For what? Give us another chance. I looked at her. You had a chance yesterday. I was wrong. You were. I was selfish. Yes. She wiped her eyes. I didn't think you'd actually sell. I nodded. That's the problem. She looked confused. What? You thought I wouldn't do anything because I'm your father. She started crying. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. I spent years making sure you always had somewhere to go. She looked at me. And you made me feel like I was in the way. Her husband finally spoke. She's sorry. I looked at him. So am I. My daughter looked surprised. I'm sorry I raised you to believe love means unlimited access. She shook her head. Dad. No. I held up my hand. This isn't punishment. Then what is it? Consequences. The buyer returned. Mr. Hayes, I need your decision. I looked at my daughter, then at the house, then back at him. Sell it. My daughter gasped, but the buyer wasn't finished. He opened another document. There is one more thing. I frowned. What? He handed me a contract. Your property is actually worth considerably more than my original offer. My daughter stared at the number, and this time even she couldn't speak. The new number was almost twice the first offer. My daughter stared at it. Why is it worth that much? The buyer explained that a development project had been approved nearby. The property sat on a corner lot. That made it valuable. Very valuable. My daughter looked at me. Dad, please. I folded the contract. You don't need to ask. I do. She stepped closer. Please don't sell. I studied her face. Why? Because it's our home. No. She shook her head. It is. It was your home because I allowed it to be. She looked hurt. I thought family meant you'd always be there. I am always here. Then why are you doing this? Because being there for someone doesn't mean letting them treat you however they want. Her husband nodded slowly. I understand. My daughter looked at him. You do? He sighed. I should have stopped you yesterday. She stared at him. He continued. When you told your dad there wasn't room, I should have said something. I looked at him. He wasn't defending himself. That mattered. The children finally got out of the car. My youngest granddaughter ran toward me. "Grandpa!" I knelt down and hugged her. She whispered, "Are we in trouble?" "No." "Are you leaving?" I smiled. "Not from you." My daughter watched us. Then she started crying. I stood. "You can visit me." "Where?" "Wherever I live next." She looked at me. "You've already decided." "Yes." "Where?" I smiled. "There's a smaller house I bought last year." Her mouth fell open. "You already owned another house?" "Yes." She looked completely stunned. The buyer smiled. "Mr. Hayes has been planning his retirement for years." My daughter stared at me. "You never told me." I nodded. "Now you understand." She looked at the house one last time, then asked quietly, "Can I come inside?" I looked at the front door. "Yes. But this time I open the gate. You'll knock first." My daughter walked through the front door slowly. For the first time in years, she looked like a guest. She stood in the living room and looked around. The family photographs were still on the walls, her wedding picture, her childhood school photos, pictures of her mother. She touched one frame. "Mom loved this house." "I know. I know." She wiped her eyes. I didn't realize how much I took it for granted. I didn't answer. She walked toward the kitchen. "Do you remember when I broke that window?" I smiled. "You blamed the dog." She laughed through her tears. "You knew it was me." I always knew. For a few minutes, we simply remembered. Then she said, "Dad, I'm sorry." I nodded. "I know. No, I mean it. I believe you." She looked at me. "Will you forgive me?" I thought about it. Yes. Her shoulders relaxed. "But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was." She nodded. "I understand." Her husband came inside. He stood beside her. "We'll find somewhere else." I looked at him. "You should." He nodded. My daughter looked toward the front window. "Where are you going?" "I'll tell you when the sale closes." "Why won't you tell me now?" "Because I don't want you choosing your next home based on mine." She understood. That afternoon, the buyer returned with the final paperwork. I signed. My daughter watched quietly. When I placed the pen down, she asked, "Are you really okay?" I looked at her. "I will be." She hugged me. I hugged her back. But this time, I didn't promise to fix everything. I didn't promise her a house. I didn't promise to pay her bills. I simply told her, "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Then she stepped away. And for the first time since my wife died, I felt like I was finally closing one chapter of my life without closing the door on my daughter. The sale closed 3 weeks later. I moved into the smaller house I'd purchased the previous year. It wasn't as large, but it had something the old house hadn't had in a long time: peace. My daughter and her husband rented an apartment across town. They didn't ask me to pay the deposit. They didn't ask me for furniture. They didn't ask for anything. That alone told me something had changed. A month later, my daughter called. "Dad?" "Yes." "Can I come over?" "Of course." She arrived alone. She sat at my kitchen table and placed a small envelope in front of me. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a handwritten letter. She had written down everything she regretted. Not just the trip, not just the words she said, everything. She wrote about all the times she'd assumed I'd always rescue her. All the times she treated my help like an obligation. And then she wrote something that made me stop. I didn't understand the difference between having a father and having someone I could depend on financially. Trabda. I read that sentence twice. Then I looked at her. "That's honest." I needed to be. I folded the letter. "Thank you." She smiled. "There's one more thing." "What?" She pulled out her phone. "I've started looking for a job." I raised an eyebrow. "You already have a job." "I mean, a better one." "Why?" "Because I want to know I can take care of my own family." I nodded. "That's good." She smiled. Then she asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Sure. Why did you never tell me about your money?" I looked at her. "Because I wanted you to learn how to stand without it." She nodded slowly. I think I finally understand. We sat quietly for a moment. Then she smiled. You know what? What? I miss the old house. So do I. But I don't miss who I was in it. That sentence stayed with me, because she was right. Sometimes losing something isn't punishment. Sometimes it's the first thing that forces you to grow. A year after that day, my daughter invited me to dinner, not at my old house, not at an expensive restaurant, but at the small apartment she and her husband had rented. When I arrived, my granddaughter opened the door. Grandpa! She hugged me tightly. Mom made your favorite. I smiled. Then I'm staying. My daughter laughed from the kitchen. That's the plan. Dinner was simple. No arguments. No expectations. No one asked what I owned. Nobody mentioned the money. After we ate, my daughter brought out a small box. I want you to have this. Inside was an old photograph of my wife holding my daughter when she was a baby. I stared at it. Where did you find this? It was in the old house. I smiled sadly. I thought it was gone. I kept it. She sat beside me. Dad? Yes. I used to think you sold the house to punish me. I didn't. I know. She looked down. You sold it because you finally respected yourself. I didn't correct her because she was right. That day in the driveway had changed our relationship, not because I sold a house, but because I stopped allowing my love to become something people could take for granted. I still help my daughter sometimes, but now she never expected it. She asked. I answered. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes I said no, and she respected both. Before I left that night, she hugged me. Dad? Yes. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled. I never gave up on you. I opened the door. I just stopped carrying you. She nodded. And as I drove home, I realized something I wished I'd understood years earlier. Being a good parent doesn't mean giving your children everything. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them discover they can stand on their own.